At 2:04 a.m., a crackling radio in a closed diner started playing a little girl's voice, singing happy birthday. No one had touched the dial. No guests had been inside for hours. The cake on table 7 was still warm. She vanished in 1982, last. Seen walking home with a red balloon and a cassette player in her backpack. Last night, police found that same backpack beneath the booth still playing. On the tape, the girl sings louder, then whispers, "I see you." She only sings when someone's listening. Did you just hear her? Or is she hearing you? They had sealed the diner in 1992, 2 years after the girl vanished, though no one agreed on who had placed the lock. By the time Ruth stood outside it again, the yellow tape had long since faded into threads, clinging like cobwebs to the handle. She didn't remember driving there. She barely remembered who had told her to come, only that she had seen a line. In a photocopied police report, audio interference log at 2:04 a.m. Booth 7. The door opened too easily. Inside, it smelled faintly of vanilla frosting, hot steel, and mildew. The scent had no right to be warm. No lights were on, but the windows, dusty and untouched, caught the morning sun in thin blades. They split the booths into quiet cells. Booth 7 sat in the back corner beneath the antique radio nailed to the wall, the volume knob broken. Off decades ago. It was playing, a child's voice, singing slowly, syllables dragging as if underwater. Happy birthday. Ruth didn't move. Her breath stopped short of fogging the glass door behind her. She watched the tape spin. Old, magnetic, impossible, and counted the seconds before it looped again. She remembered this place. But she didn't remember the birthday. Someone had set a cake on the table, not plastic, not rubber. Frosting had begun to crack at the edges, as if it had just barely cooled. 8 candles, all unlit. The cake bore a name in red icing, smeared. And Ruth didn't need to read it to know what it said. Her knees weakened slightly. She sat down across from it. The vinyl seat sighed beneath her, like something exhaling after holding its breath for too long. On the booth's edge was a napkin, folded once, stained faintly pink. A child's handwriting curved across it in trembling letters. "I see you." She touched the note, and the radio stopped. No click, no static. Just a full-bodied silence. Too heavy for a room this small. There had been another girl. Ruth remembered her differently each time. Brown hair, then blonde, with glasses, then none. Always wearing red. Always humming. Always gone before. The third line of the song. Ruth was certain they'd been here together once, but she couldn't remember the last words she'd said. The table across from her bore deep scratches, some intentional, others chaotic. One of them looked like a child's drawing of a balloon, a string trailing off the edge, curling like breath in the cold. She reached to trace it, and that's when she saw the photo, folded beneath the cake plate, burnt along the top edge. She pulled it free with shaking hands. The photo was decades old, a birthday snapshot. 4 girls. One missing a face, blurred not from damage, but as if the camera had never focused on her. Ruth was in the picture. She had been smiling. But in the photo, her eyes were closed. No candles. No cake. Behind them, in the corner of the diner, a mirror was caught in frame, and in it, the 5th girl. Standing outside the reflection, watching. Ruth flipped the photo over. A date, August 1st, 1982. Today. The door behind her closed. She hadn't heard it open. Ruth turned slowly, but no one was there. Just the quiet, the fading warmth of the air, and something else, something barely visible on the glass. She leaned forward, a breath print, faint, small, centered at a child's height. She stepped back, instinctively clutching the photo to her chest. Her gaze drifted downward. A single child's shoe sat beneath the booth. Dusty, pink, the kind with a little heart on the side. She recognized it, not from memory, but from evidence. A scan of it had been filed in the original missing persons report. She'd read it over and over, back when she worked records. It was the only thing they had left of the girl. She shouldn't have come here. This place wasn't just closed, it had been erased. The diner was gone from business directories, aerial maps, even tax filings. She'd found the address scribbled on the back of an anonymous envelope left on her windshield 3 nights ago. Inside was a burned hymn page with a single verse circled in red pencil. "And the little shall call unto the lost, and the lost shall answer from below." That verse didn't exist in any published hymnal. She knew, she'd checked. A sharp sound cut through her memory, a small scrape. Wood against wood. The drawer behind the counter had opened. Ruth rose. Instinct tight in her throat. She didn't want to move. Her body felt borrowed. But she crossed the room, the floor groaning under each step. She passed the jukebox, silent. Past the cracked salt shaker on the corner of table 4, where a fly still circled something rotten. Behind the counter, the drawer was open just 2 inches. Inside, a cassette tape. Labeled in faded typewriter font. "Do not rewind." She touched it, and for just a second, the radio behind her let out a single note, long distorted. It wasn't the birthday song. It was something lower, more like breath against a microphone. She took the tape, flipped it over. On the back, someone had etched a mirror image of the phrase, "I see you." But mirrored, it read another way. "You see I." Ruth blinked. Something moved in the mirror across the diner, not her reflection, not fully. A shape behind her, where no one stood. She turned. The booth was empty. No cake. No napkin. No photo. Booth 7 was clean. Like no one had ever touched it. Her hands trembled. The tape was still in her grip, but the label was blank now. She checked her phone for the time. 2:04 a.m. But her phone was off. Battery dead. And the home screen showed an old wallpaper she hadn't used since 2019, a picture of a girl she couldn't name. Standing outside a diner she swore she'd never seen. Ruth looked up. The radio began playing again, the birthday song. Fainter now. As though it had been buried beneath glass, she stepped backward, out through the door, into the early morning haze. Her breath curled in front of her like the balloon string from the carved table. She thought she saw red through the trees, a single balloon drifting just out of reach. When she looked down, the napkin was in her hand again. She hadn't picked it up. This time, the handwriting was different, angular, older. Below the words, "I see you," something new had been written. "Happy 8th birthday, Ruth." She didn't remember turning 8. And in the diner window, reflected just behind her shoulder, the 5th girl stood watching, smiling. Waiting for someone to blow out the candles. The booth still held warmth. That left by body heat. But something deeper like grief pressed into vinyl. Ruth didn't sit. She stood beside it with her hands drawn close, elbows locked, unsure if touching anything would wake it again. The table looked the same, but the cake was gone. So was the napkin. The balloon engraving was faded beneath lacquer, yet when she blinked too long, the strings seemed to twitch. The air tasted faintly of iron and melted frosting. From the corner, the antique radio crooned softly into static. Same birthday song, same broken pitch. But this time, it had another layer. Someone else was speaking. Low, behind the melody. Not in words, not quite. Just breaths shaped into almost sentences. As if the song were being remembered, not sung. She stepped closer to the radio, drawn like a name half recalled. The cassette tape inside spun steadily. The radio had no power source. No dial, no visible speaker. She thought of ripping the tape out, but something about it. It didn't feel like it wanted to stop. She's not singing to be heard. She's singing to remember. The line arrived in her head not as thought, but as echo, like something she had overheard once. Like something whispered through a wall from a room no longer there. She moved to sit. Booth 7's cushion exhaled. Not air, something denser. The smell changed, older, sharper. Burnt sugar, sweat, perfume long since discontinued. Her palm brushed the tabletop. It was warm again. Just where someone's hand might have rested across from her. The seat across held a shape in the leather, child-sized, as though someone had just leaned forward to blow out candles that never lit. She didn't mean to reach, but her fingers moved to the spot, and something responded. Not sound, not movement, just a knowing, like the booth had been waiting. And now it could begin. The static from the radio fractured, split clean down the center by a girl's voice, mid-sentence. And then I said, don't tell her, but the mirror, click. Just a game, I think. But he had the camera and she was, click. No one's supposed to sit here unless they know. Then silence again. The tape didn't rewind. It didn't click off. It just breathed. Ruth leaned back. Her shoulder brushed something paper, tucked behind the napkin dispenser. She pulled it free. A page torn from a hymnal. Hand numbered at the bottom. 37. Verses redacted with heavy ink. Lines circled in jagged pen. One was still legible. She shall rise in the memory of the faithful, but not be named. She folded it quickly, as if hiding it from someone who already knew she'd read it. Her gaze drifted back to the window. Light pushed through the glass in fractured lines, casting the diner in long bars like shadows from something no longer standing. At the far wall, the mirror caught a reflection that didn't match the room. Different lighting, different year. Same booth, and someone was sitting in it. A girl, facing away, hair tied in red ribbon. She lifted a spoon to her mouth but never swallowed. Ruth turned in her seat fast. Nothing there. The mirror still showed her. Just her. But now her own reflection wasn't moving. She watched it breathe. Blink but slightly out of sync, a half second too slow. As though the girl inside had just started remembering who she was. Behind the counter, a drawer opened by itself. Wood against wood. Deliberate, Ruth didn't move. But the drawer did. Sliding just far enough to expose what was inside, she stood. Slowly, the floor creaked differently this time. Not beneath her weight, but as if it had grown sensitive to presence. A place that had once learned to hold secrets, now shuddering at their return. She reached the counter. Her hand hovered. Then opened the drawer, the rest of the way. A child's shoe, white canvas with the heel chewed through, same as in the photo from the archive. But now it was dry, clean, recently worn. Underneath it, a stack of index cards bound in twine. She lifted the top one, typed in machine font, Survivor. Statement filed 1986. Unverified. But the name was redacted. Just blank ink across where a child's name should be. She flipped it over. Written in small pencil. It wasn't the singing that scared us. It was that we all remembered different songs. Ruth let the card fall back. Her hands ached. She looked around the diner again, searching for change. The clock above the entrance was moving in reverse. 1 second per breath. She checked her phone, still off. Still showing 2:04 a.m. Same time she left. Same time she arrived. She turned back to the booth. The vinyl across from her was now wet. Like someone had just left it, tears absorbed into the cushion. She sat again, then heard it. A new sound. Breath. Not hers. On the window behind her. Fog. Just one patch. Child. Height. No prints. No face. She turned. Gently. On the glass, written in that fog, were the words, "Don't rewind it." The tape and the radio clicked once, then again. Like it wanted to. The drawer behind her closed. The voice returned on the tape. But not the girl's. This time it was a man. Left the booth like she asked. Cleaned the seat. Cake was gone. When I came back, still smelled like strawberries though. I was alone. I was Pause, long breath. I saw her reflection in the mirror. But she never came through the door. Static dot, then a loop. Dot dot, still smelled like strawberries though. Still smelled like strawberries though. And in the mirror again. Not hers, a hand, on the glass. Pressed dot, not visible in the room. Only reflected dot. She stood quickly. The sound stopped. She backed away from the booth and nearly tripped over a loose tile. Near the base of the jukebox dot, she bent to fix it. There, between the tile and baseboard, something shiny caught light. A small black canister, film .35 millimeters, label marked in pen. 4. U dot. She picked it up, held it to the window dot. Inside, undeveloped negatives. But she could already see the silhouettes. 4 girls at a table, one facing away, one missing a head, one smiling too directly into the lens, and one holding up a note. Ruth squinted, brought it closer. The note in the photo said, "She doesn't know yet. Don't tell her. It ruins it." Ruth blinked. And in the mirror behind her shoulder, the girl with the red ribbon smiled. Spoon still raised. UNMOVING. Waiting. The backpack was found beneath the stairwell. That wasn't on the floor plan. Julian hadn't spoken since they opened the false panel. Not even when the smell hit dust, old fabric, and something else. Something that hadn't aged. He just crouched, gloved hand hovering over the child-sized bag. Red with melted trim and one plastic buckle frozen mid-snap. He couldn't remember who had first said her name that morning. Not the detectives, not the archivist who unlocked the sub-level blueprints, not even the janitor who claimed he'd heard water running under the stairs. But someone said it. And the bag had been waiting. He didn't speak until they were alone in the evidence room. Fluorescent light overhead hummed like a held breath. The bag sat untouched on the stainless steel table. A red balloon still tethered to one zipper loop by a string stiff with time. "She would have been my age," he finally said. No one responded. The recording team was late, and the others had left for the day. The hallway outside creaked like it was settling wood sighing around a lie. He unzipped it slowly. The teeth didn't resist. They slid open with a softness that made his stomach tighten. Inside, everything was too clean. There was no rot, no decay, no spiderwebs, no mold. Just a worn-out hymn sheet folded like a note passed in class, a melted cassette still in its pink plastic case, and a Polaroid that made his throat close. She was smiling. Same hair, same dimple on the left cheek his mother had. But the building behind her hadn't existed until 5 years ago. The photo was stamped in fresh, black ink, August 1st, 2025. His breath caught on something silent. Not disbelief, something worse. Recognition. He reached in and pulled the photo closer, fingers shaking. The ink hadn't dried yet. The corner smudged as he touched it. Her eyes were looking slightly left, not into the camera, but past the photographer, as if she was seeing something coming, something behind them. He looked up. The mirror on the opposite wall was not a mirror. It was just glass. Double-sided, forensic, installed for observation. But it had no frame now. The screws were gone. And in its surface he saw the room as it was 10 minutes ago. The bag still zipped, no photo in his hand. His reflection moved slower than he did. He stood quickly. The chair behind him scraped the floor and left no sound. Then came the breath. Not his. Condensation bloomed on the glass, low and wide, as if someone shorter had exhaled from the other side. He turned off the light. The fog remained. He should have left then. But the smell had changed. The red balloon twisted on its string, slow, deliberate, like it was tethered not to air, but to memory. He checked the hymn. The fold was stained with something dark, rust maybe. Or grief. It had been torn from songs. For Ascension Day. He read it aloud before he could stop himself. "Come children, come listening. The stairs don't end here." No melody, no notes. Just those 2 lines. The lights flickered. Or maybe they didn't. Maybe his memory staggered. He pulled out the melted cassette. The label read, "Play before morning." The handwriting was juvenile, but careful. The pay in play curled like his sisters used to, when she was trying not to smudge ink. Julian reached for the tape player in the corner, one they used for analog transcriptions. It whirred alive like it hadn't been dead for decades. He inserted the cassette, pressed play. Silence. Then static. Then something clearer than he expected. Footsteps. A child's voice humming. Not a song, not a tune. Just sound. Then a girl whispering, "If you're hearing this, I didn't come back." A drawer slid open behind him. He froze. It wasn't his drawer. This room didn't have drawers. He turned. A filing cabinet had appeared when he didn't. Remember, half sunken into the concrete wall. Its bottom drawer was ajar, a single red child's shoe inside. The laces were still tied. The tongue had a name marker in fading blue ink. Amelia VRM. 2BHE. Whispered her name. The balloon BOBBE. He sat. Slowly. Fingers shaking worse now. The cassette crackled again. You have to remember where you buried it. It's not the backpack. It's what's under the photo. He flipped the Polaroid. The paper was thicker than it should have been. 2 layers fused at the edge. He peeled gently. Between them, a smaller square fell out. A negative. Burnt around the edges. He held it to the light. It showed a stairwell. The same one. But instead of the bag, there was a child curled in the shadows, face obscured by her arms. No balloon. No cassette. Just her. Waiting, and written in reverse. As if from inside the image. Don't turn around. The mirror cracked. Just a hairline. But it moved, not shattered. Not loud. Just an evolving fracture, as if the glass was changing its mind. He moved toward it. 1 step, then another. Inside the reflection. The chair was empty. The balloon was gone. His own reflection didn't blink. He turned back. The red balloon now floated above the table again, higher than before. He backed into the wall. The tape stopped, but the sound didn't. From behind the cracked mirror, humming. The same non-song, circular, innocent, repeating. Then came the whisper, louder now. Your name's not on the list. But I remember your hands. The lights snapped off. The mirror glowed faintly. He turned and pressed his hand to the glass. Not out of curiosity, but compulsion. A cold spot met his fingers from the other side, matching him. Same palm. Same scar he'd gotten from the 3rd grade fire drill. He staggered back. In the brief moment before the lights returned. The fog on the glass reappeared, and this time, it didn't match his breath. It formed one word. Stay. He didn't. He ran, but the Polaroid came with him. He didn't remember packing it. He didn't remember putting it in his coat. But it was there. And that night, alone in the motel, he looked at it again. The girl was still smiling, but now there were 2 figures in the background. Not just the building, not just her. A man behind her, gloved hands. A steel table, and her. Eyes looked forward this time, not past the camera. Straight at him. He flipped the photo again. The timestamp had changed. Now it read, August 1st, 2025. The same date as today. The tape clicked. Not forward, not stop, reverse. Dr. Mira Enright stood frozen in the doorway. A clipboard pressed so tightly against her chest that the edge left a diagonal line across her blouse. The reel-to-reel was supposed to be locked. She'd left it that way after the last session. No one had touched the machine since. No intern, no janitor, not even her. And yet the spools wound backward, slow, deliberate, like they were listening to something deeper than what had been said. The patience. Name had been scrubbed from the ledger. There had been a name. A file, notes. She remembered her handwriting, pale blue ink. Pressure heavy, looped G's. But now, Only a thin redacted label marked the folder on her desk. Audio log 31C. Transferred to basement archive. The basement had been sealed since March. Mold risk, they said. Broken lighting. Something about asbestos. But the elevator still went there. And the key on her ring, the one no one had ever told her what it was for, had fit the lock. Now, inside the dark-paneled consultation room, the smell of the old machine mingled with humidity and freon. A child's shoe sat beside the recorder. Dusty, faded canvas, one lace torn, like it had been buried and pulled out of a flood. Mira hadn't seen it before. The tape stuttered, and the voice that came through next wasn't the girl's. It was older, crooked with reverb. And male. Do you remember where they hid the mirror? Mira's stomach flinched. She'd recorded that session alone. The girl had drawn a spiral on the window with her finger, humming the whole time. That hum high, off-key, like she didn't know how to breathe right, was still etched into Myra's sleep. But the man's voice wasn't on the original tape. She would have remembered. She walked closer. The reels spun. Static gave way to humming again. But this time, the girl hummed a hymn, not a lullaby. Not nonsense. A hymn. Page torn from the chapel book. Mira had seen it once in the East Wing. A child had ripped it from a hymnal during a fit. The nurse had burned the page after. But now the words came back. Sleep not the child whose name was called, for breath is known beneath the wall. The drawer behind her opened. Myra's head snapped around. The drawer hadn't existed before. The cabinet was sealed shut. Every file inside had been removed last week. Dr. Turlin himself had ordered it. Yet here it was, creaking open without touch. Inside a photo, charred at the edges. A girl stood next to a mirror, smiling. The wall behind her bore a handprint, no two. One was hers. The other, larger, adult-sized, smeared like someone had tried to wipe themselves away. The mirror didn't show the same year. In the reflection, the calendar read 1991, but the back of the photo, still scrawled in fountain pen ink, read June 3, 1972. Termination successful. Mira blinked. Her breath fogged the glass panel on the recorder lid. She hadn't been breathing. They think if they hum it, it won't come back. That voice again, male, UNCATALOGUED. The machine clicked forward. Now, the girl was back. He told me not to say the words, so I sing them. What words? Mira's own voice, asked on the recording. The ones I didn't hear yet. The reel squealed. Tape caught on something. The girl began to laugh. Then stopped. Then hummed again. Play me alone, she whispered. The lights flickered. Myra's gaze locked onto the mirror in the corner. It had never worked. Installed during renovations, but misaligned. It had always reflected the hallway outside instead of the room. Now it showed the consultation room, except she wasn't in it. The chair was empty, but the patient, the girl, sat there still, bare feet. Hair damp, humming. Mira's clipboard hit the floor. She backed toward the wall, but something crunched beneath her heel. Paper. She bent, hands shaking, and picked it up. A transcript, unlabeled. The dialogue typed out word for word, words that hadn't played yet, lines that hadn't happened. Myra, read. Dr. Enright, you're not the one who sang first, are you? Girl, no. She only lets me borrow it. Then girl, you're not the one who wrote this down. The machine stopped. Dead silence. Then rewind. Again. She felt the air move behind her, not breeze. Breath. No one was there. She turned. Nothing. But the handprint was on the glass now, inside, facing out. The one from the photo. She checked the tape. The reels weren't turning anymore. The power light was off. The machine was unplugged. Still, the girl's voice played. I wasn't her first voice, and she won't be my last. What do you mean? Mira's voice asked. You remember the song, don't you? Mira's mouth opened. She did. Not from the session. From before. From childhood. A tune she'd hummed to herself when afraid. A tune she couldn't remember learning. The spiral. The window. The page torn from the hymn book. The girl had never known it. Yet she sang it first. The tape popped. Then another voice. Mira's own spoke from the machine. She remembers your breath. Mira stumbled back. She turned to leave, grabbed for the doorknob. It wasn't there. Only wall. The door was gone. Not hidden. Gone. She backed away. Her shoulder hit something, a coat rack. It hadn't been there when she entered. A child's coat hung on it, still damp. Pocket torn. She opened the flap. Inside, a burnt scrap of photo. Myra's own face. Smiling, but young, 8, 9. Standing in a hallway that looked like this one, but with older wallpaper. And in the corner, half visible, the same mirror. Behind her reflection, another child, unnamed, eyes blacked out. The machine screeched, all at once. Every sound from every session played together. Voices layered on top of each other, impossible to separate. Do you see the year? She hummed it first. Play me alone. She didn't know it yet. You're in the reflection now. It wasn't her voice first. The mirror cracked. Not all at once. Hairline. Top right corner. Then another. Splitting toward the girl's face. Then another. Down toward the reflection of Myra. And in the sound, just under the static, a new hum began. Familiar. Not the girl. Not the man. It was her own voice. Younger. And singing. The drawer slammed shut. The lights died. Only the tape spun. No reels, no power. Just the sound. One final whisper threaded between tracks. You don't remember teaching her the song. The crack in the mirror finally reached the floor. Mira looked down. The child's shoe was gone, but a second one had taken its place. New. Her size. And beside it, scratched into the linoleum, her name. Misspelled. But written in her own childhood handwriting. She opened her mouth, but the hum came out first, and it was hers. They remember her smile, but not her last name. A child's drawing of the diner shows 13 candles, not 8. Every survivor tells a slightly different story, yet they all flinch when the birthday song plays. She wasn't the only one missing. She came back to the diner. On a dare, Marla had sworn she'd never return to District House 7B, even if they renamed it a family grill and plastered red and white checks over the bulletproof tile. But her brother's son, Gavin, had turned 8 and begged to see the cursed booth he'd heard about from the internet. The one where the girl blew out the wrong number of candles and disappeared before her cake was cut. Only 5 minutes, Marla told herself, holding the doorframe like it might bite. The old entrance groaned open, not the sound of hinges, but a soft groan, as if someone had been trying not to wake. The air inside hadn't moved since 1994. No one else came. The employees had closed for maintenance, allegedly, but the lights were still on. An exit sign blinked overhead, slower than it should. Not a flicker, but a deliberate pulse. The kind you'd find in buildings with only 2 floors, but 4 elevator buttons. Gavin didn't follow. He'd gotten distracted talking to a kid outside, he said. A girl with no shoes and a ribbon in her hair. I think she was looking for someone. He'd whispered. Marla turned back toward the booths. Toward that booth, table 7 still had the child's drawing, tacked behind the sugar packets. She wasn't sure how it had survived the renovation, or the fire, or the shutdown, or the protests, but there it was. Faded crayon, thick paper. The diner from a child's eye-crooked floor, tall seats, birthday cake with candles, 13 of them. Marla's stomach drew tight. The girl had been turning 8. She remembered the voice now. Not the girl's, but the server. Heavy lipstick, hairnet, skin like stacked paper. Someone blew out one too many, honey. That's bad luck in this county. She'd winked. Then whispered, last time it happened, the train station burned down. Table 7 looked smaller than it had that day. The fake leather had split open, stuffing curled like dead moths, but someone had recently wiped the tabletop. That wasn't what undid Marla. Though it was the mirror behind the register. She turned to it absently, expecting to see her own cautious shape reflected back hands and coat pockets, cautious tilt of head. But the mirror showed the booth. And the cake. And the girl, she wasn't moving. She had the same dress from the drawing, yellow with red hem, scuffed knees, a ribbon in her hair. There were candles still burning. Her eyes were open, but she wasn't blinking. In real space. The booth was empty. In the mirror, the girl slowly turned. Marla didn't breathe. She COULDN single quotes T. Because behind the girl on the mirrored wall was another shape. Small, indistinct. Face too smooth, like it hadn't been drawn in yet. Like someone had erased the features and forgot to put them back. A voice scratched the air. No speaker, no source. It sounded like a hymn cut short. And if I go before I wake. The girl in the mirror smiled. A slow, familiar smile. It wasn't the girl's. It was Marla's, but from when? The mirror's frame cracked. Not violently, just a single hairline thread, crawling down the edge like it had been waiting. She stepped back. Boot hit something soft. She looked down. A child's shoe, burnt around the edges, melted into the grout. The laces were knotted. Still. Tied, like someone had tried to pull it off in a hurry but couldn't. There was a sound. Not a loud. Inside her skull. Birthday song. Distorted. Played. Backward. She covered her ears. It didn't help. The bathroom door clicked open. She hadn't noticed it before. Shouldn't have been a door there. The floor plan had changed. This used to be the corner where the staff clocked out. But the door was swinging inward. Dark inside, save for a tiny light, no bigger than a candle flickering behind what looked like a veil of steam. There was breathing. Short, shallow, not hers. She should have left. She walked toward it instead. The light in the mirror shifted. In the reflection, the door showed stairs. Marla stood at the threshold. Nothing on the floor. Just tile, but the mirror showed the staircase. Descending. And the girl halfway down, turning her head, waiting. She stepped through. The fall was sudden, not physically but in her gut. Like all the names she'd ever said suddenly didn't belong to anyone. The air smelled like books left in the rain. The kind no one borrowed. There were filing cabinets down here, she thought, and boxes, towers of ledgers without covers. Redacted. Pages spilled like entrails. On one table, a hymnal, torn. Only the corner remained. Lay her down where no echo stays. It read. Handwritten in the margin. Don't sing this backwards. She hears her name. Marla opened another drawer. Inside. Napkins. Each with a child's name. Some crossed out, some rewritten. Over and over, until the ink bled through. On one, her own name. Next to another, Lacey. That was it. The girl's name was Lacey. Marla dropped the napkin. Something creaked behind her. A drawer that hadn't been there. She would have sworn it held only one thing, a photo. Burnt at the edges. Still warm. Table 7. The cake. The girl, and a second shape. Just out of frame, but unmistakable. Her at 17. Holding the cake. Knife. She couldn't remember that. Couldn't even place the clothes, but her wrist had the scar. She saw it clearly in the photo. The one she'd told herself came from falling off the roof in college. She dropped the photo, ran back toward the hallway, but the door had changed. It wasn't the diner anymore. It was the church. The one they'd held the memorial in, the one that no longer existed. Torn down in 2003, there were voices again. Children's. Not crying. Reciting. Double quotes. 1 for the cake. 2 for the flame. 3 for the girl who never had a name. The hymn repeated. Over and over. Faster now. Louder. Marla covered her ears. Screaming silent. Dry-throated. but the words burrowed beneath her skull. Until silence. Complete. Except breath. On the mirror, a single fogged print. No one had stood there. She reached up to wipe it, but the glass was cold. So cold it burned. The breath fog didn't clear. It spelled something now. 4 letters. Lacey. Behind her, the mirror showed 13 candles, not 8. She looked down. Her hands were stained. She hadn't held anything, but they smelled of wax. Something brushed her ankle. The girl's voice. Not in her ear, but beneath her. From the floor. You were supposed to remember. You said you'd bring the song back. The lights flickered. Once. Twice. The hymn restarted. A single napkin fluttered up in the air from the open drawer, drifted down near her boot. Marla bent to pick it up. Her name was still there, but underneath, written in the sharp angled scrawl of a child's hand, she gave me your echo. I kept it in the mirror. Marla's reflection didn't move. It only smiled. CCTV. Glitches only at 2:04 a.m. A chair drags gently toward the recorder. Nobody enters, but the door unlocks from the inside. One frame shows a girl-shaped blur reaching for the mic. She's still waiting for someone to blow out the candles. The basement was not on any official floor plan. She'd been told it was for equipment checks, low voltage. Nothing critical. It didn't even have its own access code, just a key someone left in a drawer labeled Boiler Manual Old. But when Lena unlocked the steel door and stepped down into the quiet underbones of Langridge Hall. The lights flickered in the way buildings do when they remember something. It smelled like long-dried bleach and carpet glue. But beneath that something faintly sweet, like icing left too long in sun. She hadn't meant to come alone. Her supervisor had left early. The others said the cameras down here didn't feed into the central system anymore. Budget cuts, irrelevant, but that's not what the index card had said. The one someone had slid under her door 2 nights ago, 2:04 a.m. Chair moves on its own, girl-shaped blur, archive room C. No signature, no context. Just block letters in the kind of faded graphite that clung to paper like a bruise. Lena pushed the door to archive room C. The knob fought her. Not jammed resistant. Like it wasn't supposed to open unless someone forgot how to say no. The air inside wasn't cold, but she pulled her coat tighter. It was the kind of room built before insulation mattered. Fluorescent tubes hummed, one of them blinking as if it had something to confess. 3 long desks. Filing cabinets arranged like confessionals. And in the center an old metal chair. The kind with a bolted back and rubber feet worn to soft stubs. It faced a dead corner. Lena stepped around it slowly. No cameras visible, just a cracked mirror leaning against the far wall. She froze. In the reflection. The chair was already pulled out. She turned back. The chair hadn't moved. But the mirror still showed the gap, just enough room for a girl to sit. Lena didn't call out. Her breath clouded. The glass shouldn't have fogged. There was no heat differential, no breath but hers. She stepped toward the mirror and wiped it once with her sleeve. The reflection changed again. Now, beside the chair, bare feet. Just toes, pale, pointed forward, like a child waiting for a hymn to start. Lena dropped her hand. Looked behind her, nothing. The room held no dust, no footprints, no shadows, but on the corner of the desk sat a burnt photo. She hadn't noticed it before. Blackened at the edges, curling like petals. The center remained, a birthday party. Mid-1970s, wood-paneled room, paper hats, cake, all the children blurred. Except one, a girl with cropped bangs and one hand hidden. Beneath the table, the photo was still warm. Lena stepped back. Her spine brushed something. A drawer had opened behind her. She hadn't heard it. Didn't even know the cabinet had drawers inside. A child's shoe. Tiny, leather-strapped, one button missing. Next to it, a cassette tape. Labeled in handwritten marker, "Do not erase." 2:04. She looked up. The mirror still showed the feet. Closer now. No legs. Just the faint shape of breath fogging the edges. She inserted the tape into her portable player, the one she used for transcription. Pressed play, static, then a click. Then a child's voice, distant, humming a birthday song, but the melody was slightly off, like someone had played it backwards once and tried to remember the shape. If you hear it, you have to sit. Lena paused the tape. Her pulse bloomed in her throat. If you hear it, ... double quotes. She hadn't said anything aloud. No one could have known she was listening. And yet, the chair behind her scraped an inch toward the center of the room. Not dragged by force, but guided. Like it remembered where it had once belonged. She turned sharply. The room was still, but repositioned. The filing cabinets were now flush against the wall. She hadn't moved them, but they made space. Space for the chair, and for something across from it. A second chair. Bent wood, upholstered in faded pink. Not hers, not from this building. Dustless, she looked to the mirror. Only one chair reflected. Only one shadow. A girl's. Head tilted, mouth just slightly open like she was about to ask a question. Lena stepped forward. Slowly, the cassette tape began playing again on its own. This time no song, just a hiss. And over it, I waited my turn. Don't sit where I'm still waiting. The voice didn't belong to any known recording. It sounded directed. Like it wasn't captured by tape, but by attention. She reached for the original chair. It pulled itself an inch back, as if accommodating her. She froze. The drawer behind her slammed shut, and a hairline crack ran down the mirror, right across the girl's face. Lena looked away. But in that instant, the image behind her changed. The mirror now showed two chairs. One occupied by Lena. She hadn't sat. But in the reflection she was already there, hands folded, eyes closed. And the other chair now empty. The cassette ended with a whisper. Don't sit there. It's still her turn. She backed toward the door, fingers shaking as she reached for the knob. It wouldn't turn, but behind her, the chair returned to center. The mirror flickered once, then stilled. The photo was gone. The drawer open again, this time empty. The hymn book page that hadn't been there before now lay on the desk, torn, burnt at the corner. She could just make out the words, "She shall not be moved." She stared into the mirror one last time. Her reflection now stood, but the real Lena had not moved. Behind her in the reflection, 3 faint breath fogs. Then a fourth. The light buzzed overhead. And from behind the wall, a quiet knock. Once, twice. Then a soft birthday tune sung by. A voice too close to be memory. When she finally opened the door, the corridor outside was rearranged. Wall paint changed. Clock missing. The plaque beside the stairwell now read, Evelyn's room. That name hadn't appeared on any registry in decades. But when Lena turned to check the mirror one last time, her reflection was gone. Only the girl remained, waiting in the chair. And in the dark of the corner, where the mic had once been mounted, a new frame had been added to the footage, a handprint. Pressed against the inside of the lens, still warm, still waiting. They said it was a power surge, an isolated anomaly during a routine quarterly audit. The lights blinked, the cameras glitched, and for 23 minutes, every device with a memory forgot who it was. Even now, when Lena replayed the archive, the corrupted second always struck at 2:04 a.m. sharp as a ritual. Soft as a lie. The keycard still worked. She shouldn't have had one. Not anymore. The Institute had shut that wing down 2 years ago, after the patient evacuation, after the emergency board meetings where no one took minutes. But the reader flashed green when she swiped it, and the steel door eased open without a sound, like the building remembered her. Like it had been waiting, inside, the remains of a room that pretended not to be a basement. Vinyl booths, fluorescent menus, soft jazz piped through ceiling tiles that hadn't peeled yet. The Institute diner, Not a real cafeteria. Just a simulation. For long-stay patients to practice ordinary gestures. Ordering tea, folding napkins, naming pies. Therapy by repetition. She walked past a table with a single cup still upright. Lipstick faded to the ghost of a red vowel. She hadn't come here for nostalgia. She'd come for the blueprints. Lena's uncle had worked in facilities oversight in the 80s, and before he disappeared in 91, he told her there were rooms beneath this room. Rooms to hold what couldn't be discharged, he'd said once, drunk. Residuals, echoes, they hum if you're too quiet. No one ever found his body. Just a burnt photo left in the ceiling tile. Above his locker. Lena had the photo with her now. Folded, scorched across one side. The image warped, but still visible. A little girl in a paper hospital gown standing in the far booth, this booth staring. At the corner, barefoot, one hand resting on the table's edge. The timestamp said 1976. The diner didn't open until 1980. She reached the booth, sat, looked toward the corner, the same acoustic paneling, the same wall sconce, but no child, no burn mark. Just a soft hum in the light, and a scent she hadn't expected. Chalk and static and something older, like hymn book paper gone soft with breath. She took out the old floor plans, every version of the blueprint she'd ever stolen. Borrowed or recovered from discarded filing bins disagreed on this point. The layout was the same until the southwest wall. There, in 4 out of 6 drafts, a narrow stairwell led down. Always marked the same, echo retention. But the wall was solid, sealed, not even a seam. Lena pressed her palm against it, cold, unyielding, but her hand came away damp. The condensation shaped like a fingerprint that wasn't hers. She didn't move. Watched the print fade. When she looked up again, the booth across from her had changed. A child's shoe dot. It hadn't been there before. Brown, canvas, frayed at the laces, too small. The kind with the name tag stitched on the tongue. She leaned forward. Emmy. No last name. She had written that name before. In the files. Patient intake logs. Emmy had come through pediatrics in 1995, admitted for acute memory disjunction and echo-induced seizures. Released in 1996, but there was no discharge file, no photograph. Just a note stapled to a hymnal page. She still sings when we turn the power off. The light in the corner flickered, twice, then steady. Lena stood. Walked toward the booth. Slid in across from the shoe. It didn't move. But when she reached out, her fingertips brushed something brittle, a torn page. Stuffed in the crack beneath the table's edge. She unfolded it. A hymn. Number 237. Keep thy silence. Holy sleep, underlined, twice. A note scribbled in what looked like red ink, but smelled faintly metallic. Time is not the thing that moves. Only the telling of it. She heard it before she saw it. Breath, not hers. On the window beside the emergency fire exit. A fogging. A slow exhale forming a print like lungs pressed against glass. Then a single tap soft, like a finger asking to be remembered. She turned. Nothing outside. Just the corridor, flickering. But the fog remained. And then the sound again. This time from beneath the floor. Not air, not plumbing. A hum like someone tuning an old radio between stations. And beneath that, the staccato rhythm of small feet on linoleum, barefoot, running, then a sudden stop. The ceiling light buzzed. Went out. Only the red exit sign stayed. In its dim cast. Lena saw the booth was empty again, the shoe gone. The hymn page folded back into the dark. She tried to breathe. Couldn't. Her lungs caught around a shape too large to swallow. A name she hadn't heard in 15 years. Emmy? It came out cracked. Not a question. More like a returning. Behind her, a drawer slid open. She turned. There shouldn't be any drawers, but one was there now. In the counter by the faux register, a shallow drawer extended halfway, no handles. No noise. Just open. Inside, a mirror, round, silver-edged, the kind used in pediatric vision tests. She stepped closer. The reflection was wrong. Not flipped, just delayed. She moved her head. The image followed, but not in sync. Like watching herself through someone else's memory. The timestamp burned into the corner said, August 1st, 2026. Tomorrow. In the mirror. The diner was full. Children sat at every booth, silent, all facing away from the tables, their backs to the food. One seat, hers, was empty. Her reflection raised its hand. She didn't, but it did. The image lifted the burnt photo, held it toward the glass, and mouthed a word Lena couldn't hear, but knew. Down. The light blinked. Once more. When it steadied, the mirror was empty. The drawer gone. But in her real hand now, without any motion of lifting, it was the photo. Full. The child in the image had turned to face the camera. Her face had no features, just a blur where the eyes should be. And behind her, where the wall should have been, was a staircase. She turned to the wall again. This time, there was a seam, a hairline crack, splitting from the ceiling to the floor like a wound reopening after years of pretending to heal. She touched it. The wall was warm. And then the light above her shattered. Not a sound of breaking, but dissolving. Falling like dust. In the dark, she heard a voice. Faint. Not mechanical. A child's whisper, repeating, "We don't go unless they forget us." Again, "We don't go unless they forget us." Lena backed away, turned for the door. But the exit sign was off now. The diner no longer had a door. Just paneling where it used to be. The only way was forward. She faced the seam, stepped into it. The wall gave like fabric inside. Cold. Stone. A stairwell descending into dark that wasn't dark, but the color of erased things. Her phone flickered, then died. But as her foot hit the first step, emergency lights activated dim green, casting her shadow long and sharp behind her. She descended. At the seventh step, she passed a mirror. Cracked. She wasn't in it, only the child, sitting in the booth, shoe untied, humming hymn 237 in a voice too old for her throat. "Keep thy silence. Holy sleep." Lena reached the bottom. The door had no handle, but on it blueprint paper, taped crooked, curling at the corners. The room inside was labeled Echo, Retention, but the building had no lower level. It had been years since she touched the folder. Not because she feared what was inside, but because it always moved when she didn't. Hania sat at the kitchen table, spine curled like a question mark, the overhead light swaying slightly as if someone had just passed under it. The folder had returned again, placed square in the center of the table, between the bowl of untouched dates and a school report card she didn't remember retrieving. The laminate was bubbled near the edges. The name on the tab had always been Hers, Hania Sasid, but the S now bled a little at the curve, as if it had been traced too many times. She turned it over. Slowly, no breath, no sound. Inside, the report card waited like it had something to say. Her grades were the same. The faded orange grid, the scratch of typewriter font, the institutional font of her old school's clerical machine. But it was the signature that stopped her hand. Principal Asha Farouk, signed in red ink. Fresh, wet, even, but Asha Farouk had retired the year Hania disappeared. She checked the date in the corner. Issued, April 2001. She hadn't been in school that month. Not physically, not verifiably. She closed her eyes and tried to count how many days she remembered. Monday, she had drawn the spiral in chalk, 3 dots inside. Tuesday, she'd hidden the child's shoe in the toilet tank above the broken cubicle. Wednesday, someone had added her name to the class list twice, once in pen, once in graphite. After that, it stopped. She pressed her palm to the table. The laminate was colder now. Beneath it, the shape of something charred pressed upward through the grain of the wood, like a photo had burned into the table, but from below. She leaned closer. It was a girl, her hair uneven, her mouth open, like she'd been told to smile halfway through crying. She turned her own head and stared at the kitchen mirror beside the pantry. The girl in the mirror did not match her age. Not anymore. The first lie was small, a misspelling. Her name in the therapist's transcript, Hania with 2 Ns. Then later, Hania, crossed out in black ink and corrected in red. The corrections weren't hers. She had never written in red. Each session the same questions. Where do you feel the blankness begin? What do you see when you hear the hymn? That hymn. It started humming again last night. Not in her head, in the wall. A tune she hadn't heard since they made her tear it from the school. Hymnal and swallow the pieces. Her stomach had burned for days. She went to the bedroom and opened the bottom drawer of the old desk. A drawer that shouldn't exist, one that didn't appear when guests stayed. It always returned when she was alone. Inside, the same objects. A crumpled letter addressed to someone named Anaya. A hymn sheet torn vertically, like from a child's hands, the burnt corner of a school photograph, her 3rd grade class, missing. 2 faces, but it was the photograph that made her grip the table. The burn had grown. Last week, it had stopped just above her shoulder. Now it ate into her collarbone. Her name, once scrawled in blue beneath the photo, was gone, replaced by a smudge. She felt her jaw tighten. The house creaked. Or not the house, the basement. Except this house had no listed basement. She descended the steps behind the linen closet, barefoot. The air was wet, heavy, humming like the hymn. Each footstep made a soft sound, like walking across paperwork that didn't want to be read. At the base of the stairs, the old teacher's desk rested on the left hinge. A stack of detention slips in the open drawer. She reached in and pulled one, the 3rd one down. Issued to Hania Sissid reason, talking to self during fire drill. Instructor signature, MDM, Nazli Hussein. She stared. That name again. The teacher who told the police she'd never taught her, never heard the name. Never had a Hania in her roster. But here, clear as blood, was her signature. The same loops. The same red ink. Behind the desk, a mirror leaned against the wall, tilted just slightly, enough to catch her face as she turned. But the room in the reflection was brighter. And behind her in that reflection, rows of desks. Occupied. She turned around. Nothing. She turned back. The desks were still there. The children sitting motionless. And one child in the second row, wearing the same uniform she had burned the day. They told her she'd imagined it all. Hania leaned in. The girl was crying. But only in the mirror. She touched the glass. Her finger left fog. But her breath hadn't. Upstairs, the light in the hallway cracked. Not broke, cracked. As if the bulb had split across its equator, but still glowed. Hairline fractures leaked. Yellow like old film. She went to the bathroom. The mirror was fogged. She hadn't run water. A handprint sat on the glass. Child-sized, not hers. She wiped it once. It returned. She wrote her name below it. It rearranged itself. Hane. That night. She didn't sleep. She watched the kitchen table. At 2:03 a.m., something shifted. The folder, which she had returned to its place on the bookshelf, now sat neatly reopened, report card angled toward the mirror. The signature bled slightly, red ink. Still wet. She approached and whispered, "I didn't write this." The ink curled, almost like a smile. She opened the back page. Tucked inside was a single sheet, not stapled, not bound. She recognized the paper. School issue from the front office, the kind used for behavioral summaries. The sheet read, psychological. Recommendation student, Hania S. request, memory treatment, phase 1, Approved by, redacted, no date. No stamp, just initials scribbled in the corner. The same red ink, but it was the note beneath it, hastily penciled. In a rounder Messier script that broke something open in her. She's not forgetting fast enough. She dropped the paper. Backed away. The photo on the table glowed. Faintly in the cracked light. It had changed again. This time, the burnt edge curved inward like a mouth. Her face was completely gone. She ran to the old chest in her closet, the one she had locked since her mother passed. Inside were the last few things they'd never thrown away. A pair of patent leather shoes, a melted cassette labeled Room 9C, and the envelope she'd never opened. No return address. Only a sentence scrawled across the front. If they write to you, don't write back. She opened it. Inside, a mirror shard. And behind it, a photo. A teacher's lounge. Blurred. Slightly. But near the back, a whiteboard, written on it, in thick red strokes. Hania was never Ionarl, Eled, but sitting in the front. Sipping tea was MDM, Nasli. Smiling. A date in the corner. May 2001. After her disappearance. After she'd already been removed from the school register. And on the table in the teacher's lounge, a detention slip. Signed. The same signature. The same red ink. The final word before the camera cut to static. Present. They gave Maris the tape in an envelope that hadn't been sealed. No letter. No sender. Just the cassette inside, brittle and bent at the corners like it had been carried in someone's coat pocket for too long. She turned it over in her hands before she even sat down. The sticker label was partially scratched off, but one line was still visible in faded red pen. The 6th of October 1985, do not duplicate. She didn't remember giving consent for duplication. The office they'd given her wasn't on any map of the building. Even the number on the door had been stenciled in by hand, like someone didn't want this room to exist, only tolerate it. For a while, one high window, one filing cabinet. The desk was too low for her knees. And the cassette player, a dusty, institutional gray Toshiba, already had something inside. But it wouldn't eject. That drawer never opened. She tried once and felt the click resistor, like a locked jaw. So she set the tape on top of the machine instead and stared at it, until the light changed. It was supposed to be a records review position. Internal audit of old therapy recordings from the asylum's pediatric wing 1984 through closure. That's what they said. But no transcripts came with the tapes. Just names with lines through them. A drawer full of redacted evaluations. And a hand-drawn floor plan with a hallway that didn't connect to anything that still existed. Maris hit play. Nothing at first. A click, a hum, the faint tangle of breath too close to the mic. Then a child's voice, singing, not words. Just a kind of melody that fell in and out of key like something taught in a dream. The notes hit her wrong. Not in tone, but in memory. She knew the song, but not from here. Not from this. She pressed pause. Her hand trembled. The window glass. FOGG. She hadn't breathed out. Across the desk sat an open file. Eleanor J. Age 7. No surname. No discharge. Just a burnt photo paper clipped inside, a face almost gone, features scorched to negative, but her left shoe survived the flame. Maris stared at it. A tiny buckle strap. Blue canvas. Something caught in the stitching. She closed the folder and tried to focus. The tape hissed again, without being touched. This time, a different sound emerged. Someone crying. Choked, soft, rhythmic. Like it had learned how from hearing others do it. Maris leaned closer. The voice cracked on something that could have been a name, or a warning. She hit stop. Then rewind. Then play again. The crying was gone. Now it was laughter, and not a child's. A woman's. Familiar in shape but wrong in sound. Like it had been echoed through too many empty rooms, Before reaching her, the mirror in the corner wasn't supposed to be there. She hadn't seen it when she came in. It was tall, cracked at the edge, with an iron frame that didn't match the room's decade. Dust only clung to the parts that wouldn't reflect in it. Her reflection was crying. She wasn't. She turned. And it was gone. The mirror now showed nothing. Just the window, the tape, the cabinet. Herself, but seated 1 inch too far to the left. Maris shut her eyes, counted to 3. Opened them again. Now her reflection was back, crying again. And behind it, a child's shoe on the desk. She turned fast. There was nothing on the desk but the tape. The folder still closed. The light through the cracked door flickered. Maris rose, heart lodging behind her ribs like a key caught in the wrong lock. She opened the cabinet. It groaned. Inside, tapes, dozens, all marked with dates and scribbled. Annotations. Responds to reversed hymn. Mimics sibling's voice. Knows clinician's death date, unprompted. In the very back, wedged behind a false panel, she found a smaller drawer. One that shouldn't have existed. Inside, a torn hymn page, its title unreadable, stained at the edges like it had been retrieved from water or buried in a wall. She pulled it free, and behind it, a photograph. UNBU RNT. Glossy, dated 3 weeks in the future. It showed this room. Her in it, the mirror behind her, and a child's handprint pressed against the glass on her side. She dropped it. The page fluttered to the floor like it had breath. The light in the hallway crackled. Her breath fogged again. She hadn't exhaled. Tape clicked. Now it was a voice, clear, whispered, saying her full name. Twice. Then, where did you leave her? She stood, knocking over the chair. Her knees trembled. The tape whirred on, now playing static like wind through broken teeth. The mirror showed her standing. But in her reflection, her mouth was open, whispering. She covered her mouth. Hers wasn't. The breath fogged again, but behind her this time. She turned. Nothing. Just the tape slowing down. The child's voice returning, singing again, only now she heard it. The melody had changed. It was her sister's song, the one they made up in the hallway. Of the foster home, the one they only sang when it was safe to come out. The one no one else knew. That house had burned in 1985. Her sister never made it out. The burnt photo. Maris staggered to the desk, hands shaking, and reopened the folder. She flipped it. On the back of the burnt picture, faint but still visible, sang before fire. Didn't stop after. She tried ejecting the tape again. It worked. But what slid out wasn't the tape she'd inserted. It was unlabeled. Its reels were blank. The same kind used in training simulations, meant for overwriting. She stared at it. Her hands weren't moving, but the reels began to spin anyway. The recorder wasn't plugged in. The mirror crack hissed, moved, just slightly, hairline widening. Behind her, the door creaked open. No footsteps. No draft. Just a sound, someone softly repeating her name. She didn't turn. In the mirror, her reflection raised a hand and pointed to the cabinet. She turned slowly. Opened it again. The hymn page was gone. In its place, a child's shoe. Blue canvas. Buckled. Wet at the sole, Mara staggered back. The desk chair was gone. Replaced by a folding one, red paint flecked, like the old group therapy rooms. She knew this chair. She'd sat in it before. A drawer in her head opened. She remembered the tape, not receiving it. Not reviewing it. Recording it. She hadn't listened. To the past. She'd played her own future. The child's voice on the tape? It wasn't a patient. It was her. She looked down at her hands. The palms were damp, not with sweat. With ash. The mirror showed her mouth open again. This time, it sang. The song didn't belong to the room. It belonged to whoever was watching, listening. REWINDIN Jean. The order, the light above her, blinked once, twice. The tape clicked to its end, but the machine didn't stop. Instead, a new voice came through, one she recognized as her own, older, frayed, disbelieving. She changed the ending. And now it's yours. They'd sealed the media room in '04, but the smell never left. Soft plastic rot under the reels, the brittle kind that creeps under the fingernails. Nadia stood at the door longer than necessary, her breath visible, even though the air wasn't cold. She hadn't told anyone she was coming back. The footage wasn't hers to open, but the hymn had returned looping in her sleep. 3 notes. Then 2, then one held far too long. And the voice that carried it, it was too steady for a child, too breathless for an adult. She keyed in the passcode. The panel blinked once, then went dark. For a breath, she thought the room had denied her. Then the door clicked. A slow metal hinge groan, like something inside wasn't ready to be seen again. The walls breathed differently in here. Soundproof decades ago. No sound from the hallway survived once the latch fell shut behind her. No clocks, no windows. Just the red standby light on the viewing deck monitor and the faint whine of a system not fully powered down. She set her bag on the table. Her hand brushed the corner rough. A small patch had been scorched and revarnished imperfectly. She hadn't noticed that before. A tiny square of blackened wood, maybe 4 inches wide. She didn't ask why the burn smelled recent. From her coat pocket, she slid out the tape. Label: Pine Threshold Trial Recordings, 2nd Term Memory Choir Beta. Someone had scratched out Beta and written Girl 7, alt tone beneath it. It hadn't existed in the archives 2 weeks ago. She fed the tape into the deck, the monitor whirred. The frame stretched wide before clicking into ratio. Static rolled, then cleared. A room appeared, tiled, windowless, but not this one. No date in the corner, just a flicker. And then the girl. She sat on a wooden stool, legs dangling, a hymn book in her lap. The camera was locked, no zoom, no movement, but the microphone picked up her breathing. Nadia leaned forward, her nails pressed into her thigh. She didn't recognize the girl. No one had ever reported this face, but she knew the hymn. The girl opened her mouth, 3 notes. Then 2. Then 1 held far too long. The sound wasn't distorted, it was reversed. Not in pitch, in intention. Like someone playing her memories out of order. The child's voice was beautiful, terrifying in its calm. She never blinked. Her eyes stared just below the camera, as if watching someone behind it, just out of frame. Nadia paused the video. There, behind the child. A mirror. She hadn't seen it before. Too dim, half obscured by a standing file cabinet. But it caught the light from nowhere. She squinted. In the reflection, the girl wasn't sitting. She was standing. Her mouth still, her hands at her sides. But her shadow, it was singing. Nadia stepped back from the monitor. The chair creaked beneath her, a sound not echoed on the tape. She looked around. No furniture had moved. No draft, no explanation for her. The sudden pressure in her chest. She pressed play. The girl sang the second verse. It wasn't Latin. It wasn't English. It sounded borrowed, like syllables stolen from different languages and stitched together wrong. Behind her, the mirror fogged slightly, as if someone had exhaled against it, but the girl never turned. Nadia leaned in. In the reflection, another figure now, taller, in a white coat, but no face. A hand reached out, placed something at the girl's feet. A child's shoe. The girl didn't react, but Nadia did. She'd seen that shoe before. In the evidence archive from the Thompson twins case. 2 girls missing since 1972, only 1 item recovered. A single left shoe, no pair, no prints. And no one ever found where the photo had been taken. Except now, it was here. This was the room. She rewound the footage. Froze the frame, the hymn book, torn at the spine, page 147 folded. She knew that hymn. Spirit of the Second Light. It wasn't listed in the school's official choir records. but she'd found it scribbled into the margins of a counselor's ledger alongside names that had been scratched out, names that weren't the girl's. She zoomed in. Illegible. But behind the girl's head, on the back wall scratched into the tile 3 lines. J. Holloway R. Meeks K. borrowed Nadia's breath, stopped. Borrowed, not born. Not missing. Borrowed. The frame jittered. The girl's head turned, not in the reflection, in the footage. Just slightly. Enough to meet the camera. Her lips didn't move. But Nadia heard her. As clear as a whisper pressed to bone. I need a voice. Yours remembers me. Nadia's ears rang. The monitor hissed. She reached to stop the tape, but her hand froze. A photo now flickered on screen. Inserted, maybe spliced, though the deck wasn't capable of overlays. A burnt edge. Blackened fingers holding a Polaroid. The girl, again. Same stool. But this time, someone stood behind her. Not a figure. Not a shadow. Herself. Nadia 10 years younger. Wearing the observer's lanyard from her practicum at St. Aloys. She remembered that semester. But not this room. Not this child. Her. Voice broke. I never. The tape cut. Silence. Then again, the girl's voice. But not from the speakers. From behind her. A single note. Held. Too long. Nadia. Turned. No one there. But the mirror in the corner, small square. Covered in dust. It was FOG. G. She approached. In it. She wasn't alone. The girl stood beside her. Just out of frame. But her reflection blinked. Nadia's did not. She wiped the glass. Under the dust. A year carved faintly into the corner. 23-1. Not this year. Not yet. A new sound started. Soft. Familiar. From her coat pocket. She reached inside. She hadn't brought her recorder, but something vibrated. It was warm. She pulled it out. Her old cassette player. The one she'd stopped using after her interviews with survivor patients from the Meeks unit. It hadn't worked in years. But now a tape was inside. She didn't remember inserting one. Label. Return tone. N.H. She pressed play. Silence. Then. Her own voice. Softer, younger, terrified. I don't think she borrowed it. I think I gave it. Click. Nothing. She looked back at the screen. The girl gone, but the shoe remained. The burnt photo. Now lying under the stool. Nadia stepped closer to the monitor. There etched into the wood below the screen. The name you forgot is the one she sang. With, then one final note played. Low. Fragile. And from behind the mirror. A sound, not a whisper. A knock. But not asking to come in. Asking to be let out. It was the smell that never left the diner. Not grease. Not coffee. But something faintly sweet and wrong. Like sugar spilled too long on linoleum. Like wax melted into a floorboard where no candle should have been. That was the first thing Layla noticed when she stepped back inside for the first time since the fire, except there had been no record of a fire. Just a closure for repairs in 1998. But the booth by the window still had the scorch mark beneath the seat. And the glass had never been replaced, only wiped. The bell above the door hadn't rung, even though she was sure it had when she walked in as a child. It had been her birthday. August 1st. A cake had waited for her, though she didn't remember who had brought it. Just that her name had been misspelled, Layla. The frosting had been dark red, too dark, and the knife to cut it had come from under the table, not the kitchen. Now in her 30s, with the past scraped over and refiled like it had never mattered, Layla stood inside. The closed diner again. Her key hadn't worked. The door hadn't been locked. Dust on the counter. A stack of plates set too neatly. No electric hum from the fridges. And yet there was a cake in the window, fresh, 7 candles. Each flame motionless. Wax unmelted. She hadn't lit them. She didn't move closer. The booth had been wiped down. Again, always clean. Like someone was afraid of memory smudging the vinyl. The mirror behind the counter showed her face. but the clock above her head said 1999. The same year she stopped being counted in the class registry. The same year the ledger listed her as transferred reason unlisted. She ran her finger across the glass. The reflection left behind was a second too slow. Not a lag, a hesitation, then a breath. On the mirror, not hers, there had been no sound, but the breath stayed. A perfect fog print. No lips, no nose, just the shape of presence. As if someone had leaned close to whisper her name, her body remembered it before her mind did. The ritual. Every August 1st, a name appeared in the frosting. Always someone new. Always written in shaky letters that shimmered like wet ink but never smudged. When she was 10, she had found the cake. When she was 11, the name on it had not been hers, but she had known the girl. Teresa Kahn, last. Seen in the hallway of room 8B at precisely 2:04 a.m. Teresa's shoe had been found on the rooftop. Only one, a size too small for her file. Layla blinked hard. The mirror said 2004 now. A whisper. You're not supposed to be here after the candles. Go out. She turned. The lights flickered only once, and the reflection cracked. A thin, hairline fracture split the mirror vertically, right through her eye. The crack didn't exist in the real glass, only in the mirrored one. She stepped away. Under the booth table, there was a drawer. She didn't remember it. No latch, no handle. Just flush wood paneling with a seam she could feel but not see. She knelt. Her breath caught. Her knuckles pressed against something warm. It slid open with no resistance. Inside, a burnt photo. The edges were singed, but the faces remained. 7 girls at a birthday party. 6 smiling. 1 staring past the lens. Her own face behind them. The diner window. The cake on the sill. But in the photo, the name on the cake was Evelyn. She didn't know any Evelyns. A sound behind her, a drawer closing, but not the one she'd opened. Layla stood fast. Nothing moved. The kitchen door was ajar, swinging just slightly. Beyond it, cold. Not the kind that comes from refrigeration, but the kind that feels carved from stone underground. She should leave, but she had done that once before, and it hadn't undone anything, just buried it. This time, she pushed the door open. A hallway. Where the kitchen should have been. Tiled floor. Institutional. Familiar. She had seen this corridor. In a different building entirely. St. Adeline's Home for Lost Youth. The wing that was demolished in 2002. The wing where room 8B had no windows, but still reflected moonlight. Layla's throat dried. The hum of lights above her gave off no warmth. Down the corridor, a wall of lockers. Each locker bore a number, not sequential. Just years. 1989, 1993, 1998. She passed them slowly. 1 locker had no number. Only a single child's shoe tied to the handle with a red ribbon. Inside, folded like prayer, was a hymn torn from a songbook. The ink was smeared, but she could read the last line. Return what was taken, or never leave. Another whisper. Time doesn't close, it loops. She knew the voice. Teresa's. No, she remembered it now, because Teresa hadn't just disappeared. She had called Layla from inside a wall. Her voice, late at night, behind the vent in the old dormitory. No one believed her. The headmistress said she was mimicking TV shows. They put her in the quiet room for 3 days. The quiet room didn't appear on the blueprints. She reached the end of the hallway. A single bulb above flickered. Below it, a chair, not facing her, but occupied. A figure, slight, still, a girl with shoulder-length hair, a candle in each hand. 11 of them on the floor around her. The girl did not turn. But she whispered, "You blew out mine, on accident." Layla's breath hitched. She had. On her 10th birthday, Teresa had leaned in too close. The wax had splashed, the frosting had scorched, they laughed. But the next day, Teresa was gone. The candles on the floor lit one by one. Layla staggered back. The walls of the corridor began to pulse gently like lungs. The tiled floor beneath her peeled at the edges beneath it, old carpet, yellowed, faded stars, the floor plan of the original orphanage. Buried under renovations, buried under denial, she ran, back through the door, into the diner. But the booth was gone. No mirror, no cake, just a table, on it, a file, her name. Layla mum status referred. Not returned. Below it, redacted lines, but one word was left uncensored. Candles. On the final page, a list of names. Each with a date. August 1st. Each name was written in the same hand. Same red ink, the last. Name, Layla Mirza, 204 Amma. Sound from the wall behind her. Breathing. Slow. Familiar. The mirror. Reappeared. Cracked. The name on the cake appeared in the reflection only. Not on the table. Not in reality, but there it was. Her name. The candles lit. The booth was clean, and the voice Teresa's. Hers. Breathed behind her again. You're next if you remember her. It was always coldest just before the cassette clicked. That brief suspension. That dead space between reels when time hesitated. Lena sat in the diner booth again. The one by the window with the cracked glass. Her coat was still damp from the alley. Rain hadn't fallen in hours, but her sleeves never dried anymore. The booth cushion stuck to her thighs as if it remembered her from last time. The lights inside buzzed faintly, dimmer than they should have been. They hadn't worked properly since the fire in '89, though no one ever admitted a fire happened. That year was redacted in the inspection logs. But Lena remembered. She was 12. She remembered the girl in the yellow dress running out before the flames ever rose. She remembered the balloon. The balloon was back now, hovering in the window. Reflection behind the counter. Same color, same string, same knot in the ribbon like someone had bitten it closed with milk teeth. She did not turn to look directly. You weren't supposed to. The tape machine on the table clicked. Not rewind, not play, not fast forward, just clicked. A breath fogged the glass across from her. She hadn't ordered coffee. There was no cup. But the fog lingered like someone had leaned forward just to listen. The recording began again. Different voice this time. Not the girl. Deeper, slower, familiar in a way that made her spine misalign. If you hear this, it means she's practicing again. Lena's fingers hovered over the rewind button, trembling. She didn't touch it. The buttons weren't real anymore, she thought. Just symbols for consent. The voice continued. I left the reel in the drawer. The one below the sink. I know you think that drawer doesn't exist, but it does now. I made it exist. Lena rose, slowly. Her knees cracked. She hadn't moved in hours, maybe longer. The diner's back wall was warped with water damage. The same brown bloom in the shape of fingers spreading outward from the edge of the tiles. There was a small kitchenette behind the counter, long disused. No sink listed on the blueprints. But it was there. She walked toward it. One step, another. Her shoes stuck slightly to the linoleum. A radio fuzzed to life in the corner for no reason. Whispering static and a child's hum, the same melody. Always that melody. The one from the hymn book with the torn corner. Verse 3 missing. At the sink, she hesitated. There was no drawer. She waited longer. Then the sound, a hairline crack of wood moving. A tremor behind the plaster. The drawer slid out. Not smoothly. Like it had been forced through time rather than carpentry. Inside was a single object. A burnt photograph, curled at the edges, its emulsion warped with heat. It showed the same diner, her booth. Same angle. Same balloon. But in the photo, she wasn't alone. The girl in the yellow dress sat across from her. Mouth open. Eyes blacked out by overexposure. She turned the photo over. In graphite, faint and childlike, the word, still, was written. Then. Another click. Back at the table, the cassette hissed again. She stops singing when no one listens, the voice said. But she never forgets who heard her. Lena stared at the booth, her heart fracturing into uneven beats. The fog was still there, but now a handprint marked the window. 5 small fingers. Too low to be hers. I shouldn't have played it, the voice on the tape whispered. I should have left the reel buried. But the song was stuck in my head, still is, she remembered now. She remembered the last recording before they took her badge. The missing children report from 1986. All 3 kids drawn in red pencil. All 3 said to have sung the same tune before vanishing. Their last known location, this diner, boarded up at the time. She remembered playing the reel late that night in the archives. Just once, just long enough to hear the first verse. That was when the mirror started showing the wrong year. Just a year off at first. 1993 when it was still 92, but it kept slipping. A sound behind her now, a footstep without a foot. A small exhale through teeth not present. She turned. The mirror across the counter reflected her, standing alone. Except her reflection wasn't moving. It smiled. Just slightly. Then mouthed something. Still listening? Lena stumbled back, knocking over the stool. It didn't hit the floor, it simply wasn't there anymore. She grabbed the edge of the counter, gasping. The air was thickening. Like the diner was underwater now, pressed down by memory. The drawer that shouldn't exist slammed shut behind her. She turned to run. The exit was 3 steps away. She took one, then the lights cut out. Just the hum remained, and the voice. She sings in 3s. Did you know that? Silence. Then the girl's voice again. Not recorded this time. Not played back. Close. Soft. 1. For the mother. Lena felt the temperature drop. Her breath crystallized mid-her. 1 for the man who lied. She backed toward the window. No light outside. The red balloon tapped faintly against the glass. And 1 for the listener. She turned too fast. In the mirror, her reflection was gone. Instead, the yellow-dressed girl sat where Lena had stood. Facing forward, silent. A faint sound played beneath the tape's hiss. Metal scraping on tile. Lena looked down. A child's shoe. Old. Leather cracked. Toe scuffed raw. It had her badge number written in chalk on the sole. But it wasn't her shoe. It was too small. It belonged to someone else. Someone who had worn her name before her. She crouched. Touched it. The hum stopped. Then the voice came back. Fainter now. Like it had traveled from far away. She only sings when someone's listening. A final click. The cassette stopped. The lights returned. Flickering weakly. The booth was empty again. The fog on the window cleared. Only the balloon remained. And then, another breath. Behind her. Are you still listening?